This story is a true account of how my life was dismantled and rebuilt from the ashes. I am telling it now because the man I was before that night no longer exists, and the woman who caused it is finally paying the price for her arrogance. I found the second phone vibrating inside the silk lining of Sarah's designer handbag while she was fast asleep in our master suite. The screen lighting up with a message that shattered 12 years of marriage in 3 seconds. I can't wait to feel you under me again. I'm counting down the minutes until he leaves for the Chicago conference. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. The air in our Lincoln Park townhouse felt suddenly thin, as if the oxygen had been sucked out by the cold glow of that hidden screen. Sarah lay there, her chest rising and falling in the rhythmic cadence of the innocent. Her blonde hair fanned out across the Egyptian cotton pillowcases I'd bought her for our anniversary. She looked like the woman I had worshipped since our days at Northwestern, the woman Dee built a multi-million-dollar architectural firm to support, the woman I'd promised to protect until my last breath. But the phone in my hand, a cheap prepaid burner, told a different story. It told the story of a stranger. I stood in the darkness of our bedroom, the city lights of Chicago flickering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting off the glass of the Willis Tower in the distance. My hands were shaking so violently I almost dropped the device. I had trusted her without a single shadow of a doubt. When she stayed late at the gallery, I believed her. When she started wearing more expensive lingerie that I never saw her in, I told myself she was just doing it for her own confidence. When she became distant, I blamed the stress of her social circle. I was the classic Fula provider who was too busy building a kingdom to notice the queen was letting a barbarian through the back gate. I unlocked the burner phone. It wasn't even password protected. She was that arrogant. She thought I was so wrapped around her finger that I would never even think to look. The messages spanned back 6 months. They weren't just physical, they were graphic, cruel, and mocking. They laughed at me, called me the ATM. They joked about how easy it was to lie to my face while I was out working 14-hour days to fund her. Lifestyle of Pilates, mimosas, and secret hotel rendezvous. The man on the other end was Julian. I knew the name. He was a consultant for the Arts Foundation Sarah volunteered for. A tall, smug prick with a British accent and a lease on a Jaguar he probably couldn't afford. I had shaken his hand. I had invited him into my home for cocktails. I'd even given him advice on his portfolio. As I scrolled through the photos, they had sent each other photos taken in my guest bed. In the back seat of the Tesla I bought her, in the bathroom of the Soho house, my stomach turned. I barely made it to the ensuite bathroom before I threw up. I sat on the cold marble floor, the silence of the house weighing down on me like a tomb. For hours, I just sat there. I wanted to wake her up. I wanted to scream, to throw her clothes out onto the street, to demand an explanation. But then I remembered who I was. I wasn't just a husband. I was an architect. I built things to last, and when things were structurally unsound, I knew how to demolish them so that not a single brick remained standing. The next morning, I was a ghost. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. I kissed her forehead when she woke up, ignoring the way my skin crawled when she smiled that practiced, beautiful smile at me. "You're up early, Mark," she purred, stretching like a cat. "Is the New York project still stressing you out?" "Just a lot of moving parts, Sarah," I said, my voice steady, a feat of sheer willpower. To make sure everything is in its right place before the foundation is poured. "You're such a perfectionist," she laughed, reaching for her phone, her real phone, to check her Instagram. For the next 3 weeks, I became an actor. I played the role of the doting, oblivious husband while I descended into a private hell. I hired a private investigator named Miller, a man who looked like he'd been chewed up and spit out by the streets of Southside Chicago. He was expensive, and he was the best. "I want everything, Miller," I told him, in a dimly lit diner off Wacker Drive. "Every location, every receipt, every time they touch. I want the financial trail. She's been spending money from our joint account on him. I want it all documented." Miller nodded, sliding a coffee across the table. "You sure you want to see this, kid? Once you see the photos, you can't unsee them." "I've already seen enough to kill the man I was," I replied. "I just want the tools to bury her." While Miller did his work, Sarah's behavior became even more erratic. She started gaslighting me with a cruelty that was breathtaking. If I asked why she was home late, she would turn it on me, accusing me of being controlling or paranoid. She would pick fights over nothing, trying to create a narrative of a broken marriage so she would have an excuse when she eventually left me for Julian. She didn't know that I was recording every single one of those outbursts on hidden cameras ID installed in the house. I watched her through the lens of those cameras while I was at the office. I watched her bring him into our home. I watched them drink my vintage scotch and laugh about how clueless I was. I watched Julian sit in my chair, wearing my robe. The rage was a physical weight in my chest, a burning coal that I had to swallow every single day. I didn't sleep. I lost 15 pounds. My employees started asking if I was okay. I told them I was just focused. By the end of the month, Miller delivered a thick manila envelope to my office. Inside were higher-resolution photos of Sarah and Julian at a boutique hotel on the Gold Coast. There were bank statements showing she had moved nearly $200,000 into a secret offshore account. She opened in the Cayman Islands money she had skimmed from our business over the last year. She wasn't just cheating. She was embezzling. She was planning to bleed me dry and run away with her artist. There's more, Miller said, leaning back in my office chair. Julian isn't just an affair partner. He's a professional. He's got a history of targeting wealthy women in the city, getting them to fund his projects, and then disappearing when the well runs dry. Your wife thinks she's in love with a soulmate. She's actually being played by a pro. A cold, dark smile spread across my face. That was the missing piece. She wasn't just a traitor. She was a victim who didn't know she was a victim. And I was going to make sure she felt the full weight of her stupidity. I spent the next 2 weeks meeting with my lawyer, a shark named Vogel, who specialized in high-net-worth divorces. We didn't just plan a divorce. We planned a surgical strike. Because she had embezzled funds from the company, she had committed a felony. Because she had used the company credit cards for her trysts, I had leverage that went beyond the courtroom. We could just serve her, Vogel said, looking over the evidence. But you want something more, don't you? I want her to have nothing, I said. I want her name to be dirt in this city. I want her to see Julian for exactly what he is the moment she loses everything. I want the destruction to be public. The opportunity came in the form of the Art for the Future Gala, the biggest social event of the year for Sarah's foundation. She was the chairwoman. All of Chicago's elite would be there, the donors, the press, our families, and of course, Julian. She had spent months planning it, telling me how it would cement her legacy in the art world. I told her I had a special surprise for her at the gala, major donation, and a tribute video for all her hard work. She was delighted. She kissed me with those lying lips and told me I was the best husband a woman could ask for. The night of the gala arrived. The Hilton ballroom was draped in silk and gold. Sarah looked stunning in a deep red gown that cost more than most people's cars. She moved through the crowd with an arrogance that made my skin itch, Julian trailing behind her like a loyal dog, though they kept a professional distance for the cameras. I waited until the main course was served. I stood up and walked to the podium. The room went silent. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice echoing through the hall. Most of you know Sarah as a pillar of this community. You know her as a woman of vision and integrity. For 12 years, I thought I knew her too. I thought I knew the woman who stood by my side as we built our life together. Sarah beamed at me from the head table, her hand resting on a glass of champagne. I wanted to show you all the real Sarah, I continued. The side of her that works so hard behind the scenes. So please look at the screens. The lights dimmed. But instead of a tribute video of her charity work, the giant projectors flared to life with the higher resolution photos Miller had taken. The first image was Sarah and Julian in the hotel lobby, their hands where they shouldn't be. The second was a screenshot of the burner phone messages, the ones where she called the donors old vultures and called me her ATM. The room gasped. A collective intake of breath that sounded like a physical blow. Sarah's face went from a smile to a mask of pure horror. She tried to stand up, but her legs seemed to give out. And here, I said, my voice dropping to a cold, hard whisper that carried through the microphone, are the bank records, showing how Sarah has been stealing from the Foundation Scholarship Fund and from our own company to fund Mr. Julian's lifestyle. I looked directly at Julian. He was already trying to slip toward the exit, his face pale and sweating. "Don't leave yet, Julian," I called out. "The police are waiting in the lobby." Turns out, embezzling from a 501c3 is a federal offense. And Sarah, my dear, I've already frozen all the accounts. The house is in a trust you no longer have access to. Your bags are already at your mother's house in Cicero. Or they would be. If she had already seen these photos and told me she never wants to speak to you again, the chaos that followed was beautiful. Sarah started screaming, a raw, ugly sound that stripped away all her carefully cultivated grace. She lunged at me, but security whom I had paid extra held her back. The press, who she had invited to document her big night, were now snapping photos of her being let out in handcuffs. The legal battle that followed was short and brutal. With the evidence of embezzlement and the prenuptial agreement she had signed years ago, which had an airtight infidelity clause, she was left with nothing. No alimony, no house, no art career. Her friends vanished overnight. In Chicago, social status is everything, and she was now radioactive. Julian, the coward, tried to flip on her to save himself, but Vogel and the DA had enough on both of them. He went to prison for fraud. Sarah avoided jail time through a plea deal, but she was bankrupt, socially exiled, and broken. A few months later, I was sitting in a small, quiet diner on the outskirts of the city. I was alone, but for the first time in a year, I could breathe. My phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "I have nothing, Mark. I'm living in a studio apartment above a laundromat. I'm working 2 jobs, please. I made a mistake. Still love you." I looked at the message for a long time. I thought about the 12 years I had given her. I thought about the man who had sat on the bathroom floor throwing up his heart. I didn't feel anger anymore, just felt finished. I typed back a single sentence before blocking the number and changing mine for the last time. "I hope the view from the bottom is as beautiful as you thought it would be from the top. The end."